The War of Akathia. This ancient conflict stands as the absolute turning point for Shurima. Thousands of years ago, Akathia was a sovereign nation with a deep intellectual tradition, eventually brought under the empire's golden wing as a mere vassal state. For generations, they endured the humiliation of imperial rule and were denied the glory of ascension. This systemic oppression created a pressure cooker of revolutionary fervor. The Akathian mages, searching for a power to rival the god warriors, unearthed the forbidden texts of the void. They believed this primordial hunger could be harnessed as a weapon of liberation. On the day of the rebellion, they tore a hole in reality. But the void is not a tool to be wielded. It is an entropic force that seeks the total erasure of matter. The city was swallowed whole, leaving behind a jagged, weeping wound in the world that continues to leak eldritch horrors to this very day. The War of the Three Sisters. In the frozen Freljord, three sisters, Avarosa, Cyrilda, and Lysandra, ruled the Iceborne. Seeking to survive cosmic threats, Lysandra made a secret and desperate pact with the Watchers of the Void. In exchange for immortality, she agreed to prepare the world for their arrival. When Avarosa discovered this betrayal, a brutal civil war erupted. It was a struggle fought with shards of true ice that never melted, pitting sister against sister in a fratricidal nightmare. The conflict reached its climax at the Howling Abyss. As the Watchers began to manifest, Lysandra realized the gravity of her error. In a final act of guilt, she sacrificed her sisters and their entire army, entombing them in a layer of magical ice to keep the Watchers buried. The Freljord remains fractured by this ancient blood feud, a land of constant tribal skirmishes and unresolved shadows. The Rune Wars. This was a series of global catastrophes that nearly resulted in the total annihilation of Runeterra. The wars were sparked by the discovery of world runes, the raw source code used by the creators of the world. When mortals found these shards, they saw them as tools for progress. But the power was too great for the human ego. Very quickly, these runes became the ultimate weapons of mass destruction. Entire civilizations were erased in the blink of an eye. The sky was choked with magical fallout, and the very air became toxic. In one instance, a single rune was used to ignite the atmosphere, turning lush valleys into scorched glass. This universal trauma birthed the anti-magic kingdom of Demacia and forced the Mage Rise into an eternal quest to hide these stones. It remains the most devastating era in history, a reminder that magic can be a funeral shroud for the entire world. The Fall of Shurima. The Shuriman Empire, once the greatest civilization in Valoran, collapsed in a single day of treachery. Emperor Azir sought to undergo a magnificent ascension to cement his legacy as a god. However, his trusted advisor, Zerath, had spent years plotting in the shadows. At the moment of the ritual, Zerath sabotaged the sun disk, channeling the cosmic power into himself. The resulting explosion was cataclysmic. It turned the golden capital to dust and withered the surrounding land into a barren wasteland. The empire vanished instantly. The surviving ascended warriors, leaderless and broken by the loss of their son, began to descend into madness. This betrayal didn't just kill a king, it ended an era of divine order, leaving the desert to be haunted by the scattered remnants of a fallen pantheon. The Darkin War. Following the collapse of Shurima, the leaderless ascended lost their purpose and their sanity. Corrupted by the trauma of the void and the dark secrets of blood magic, they became the Darkin, tyrannical warlords who tore the world apart in a relentless quest for dominance. This was an era of unprecedented carnage, where these fallen gods treated mortals as mere fuel for their war machines. The earth was stained red as the Darkin fought amongst themselves, nearly destroying the foundations of civilization. The war only ended when humans, guided by celestial knowledge, learned to trap the darkened spirits within their own weapons. Now, these sentient blades wait in the darkness, buried in the deepest vaults, seeking new hosts to restart their reign of terror and finish the destruction they started centuries ago. The Noxian expansion. Born from the ruins of the immortal bastion, Noxus became a machine of perpetual conquest. Unlike the ancient wars fought for magic or gods, this is a pragmatic struggle for resources, strength, and survival. The Noxian philosophy is simple. The Empire absorbs those who surrender and crushes those who resist. This relentless expansion has turned the entire continent of Valoran into a geopolitical powder keg. For centuries, the Noxian war bands have marched across every border, forcing every neighboring nation to militarize or die. It is a war of attrition and steel, where culture is replaced by meritocracy and weakness is considered a capital crime. The expansion continues to this day, a dark tide of iron that threatens to swallow the world in its pursuit of eternal power. The first invasion of Ionia. Seeking the magical riches of the First Lands, Noxus launched a brutal naval assault on the pacifist people of Ionia. They used chemical weapons, scorched earth tactics, and horrific necromancy to break the spirit of a land that had only known harmony. For the Ionians, the invasion was an existential nightmare. They were forced to abandon their traditions of balance to fight back against the invaders. The war reached its peak at the Placidium, where a young Irelia shattered the blade of the Noxian High General, sparking a desperate resistance. The Ionians eventually broke the invasion, but the cost was absolute. The victory left the land spiritually scarred and the people divided. It ended Ionia's era of isolation forever, turning a land of peace into a fortress of bitter memories. The Mage Rebellion. Dalmatia was built on a foundation of fear, a sanctuary designed to protect humanity from the horrors of magic. For centuries, the Mage Seekers oppressed anyone born with magical gifts, forcing them into hiding or prison. This tension finally exploded when Silas of Dregborn escaped his chains and led a populist uprising against the crown. This civil war turned the pristine streets of the capital into a bloody battlefield. It pitted neighbor against neighbor, as the very magic the kingdom feared was used to tear its walls down. The rebellion shattered the myth of Dalmatian stability and revealed the rot beneath its justice. This conflict is more than a riot. It is a struggle for the soul of a nation, proving that systemic oppression will always breed a more violent revolution. The second invasion of Ionia. Under the cold, strategic mind of Grand General Swain, Noxus returned to Ionia. But this time, the war is different. It is a war of subversion and shadows. Instead of a direct frontal assault, Noxus is funding radical factions and occupying key coastal trade routes, letting the Ionians destroy themselves from within. They are exploiting the internal divisions created by the First War, pitting traditionalists against those who want to militarize. This is a war of nerves, testing whether the First Lands can remain united under pressure, or if they will crumble into tribalism. It is a subtle, creeping conquest that proves Noxus has learned from its past failures, and that the greatest threat to Ionia might be its own fractured spirit. The Ruination, the return of Viego, unleashed the black mist across the entire globe in a supernatural cataclysm. This was not a war of armies, but a war for survival against the encroaching tide of undeath. The mist swept across continents, claiming the souls of kings and peasants alike, forcing ancient rivals to stand together or face eternal servitude. From the shores of Bilgewater to the peaks of Targon, the living fought to keep the darkness at bay. Although the Sentinels of Light eventually defeated Viego, the damage to the world's spirit was permanent. The Ruination proved that the ghosts of the past are never truly gone, leaving Runeterra weakened, paranoid, and waiting for the next great shadow to fall from the Blessed Isles.